Most people think mindset is about thinking positive thoughts, but it's actually about regulating your emotions, your energy, and creating coherence between your brain, your body, and your energy field. Today, I'm joined by Rudi Riekstins, a mindset and energy strategist who helps top entrepreneurs and executives perform at their very highest levels. He teaches how to regulate your emotions, align your energy, and create coherence between your brain, body, and mind so you can show up as your very best self, attract the right opportunities, and lead with impact. Today, he's breaking down the neuroscience-backed strategies and tools that make high performance sustainable. Rudi, welcome to the show. We have so much in common. We already know getting into it, and I am so excited to nerd out as you share all the neuroscience behind sustainable success. We were talking in the pre-chat about how you're really focused now right now on helping leaders open up their divine channel, their intuition too. So I just can't wait to get into this. I know we're going to talk about a lot of really good things. So welcome to the podcast. I'm thrilled to have you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I want to start by just acknowledging you for a moment. I believe that before we're born, we decide who we want to be. We come here and our work is to remember. Our work is to remember who we are so we can show up as that extension of ourselves. And then I like to believe that when we leave here, we transition from one room to another and then we get to review what we did and we're like, damn it, I missed the target again. I think you so beautifully are hitting the target in this lifetime. I love how you show up. I love following you online. I love your authenticity. And I love how you teach and support other people to see themselves as the way that you clearly see yourself. So I just want you to know it's an honor to be here today. It's an honor to share space with you. And I'm just so proud of the person that you are and how you get to show up because you're teaching so many people what it looks like to live in your authenticity, which I just think is the most incredible thing. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I received that. Thank you so much. That is beautiful. You and I have very similar philosophies on life and on how things work and on what we do, what we're here to do. And I think something that you shared, which I think will no doubt kind of weave in through the conversation today, is about the power of trusting yourself and the power of leaning into your inner knowing. I love how you use the word remembering. That's been a word that's come up in a lot of conversations lately within my community, within circles. I don't know how much that's happening in your community or in your sphere, but I think we've all been saying it feels like a remembering lately. And there's been a lot of deja vu happening, even for people who wouldn't normally say they have deja vu. So this is totally off script, not something I was going to ask you, but I'm just curious. Do you feel that happening in your community, in your life, maybe in bigger ways than it was several years ago, where it's like a collective remembering of who we came here to be?
So this is definitely going way off target, but let me say this. It's divinely created for the global market to start to remember who we are. And I phrase it that way very intentionally. My wife is a master numerologist, so she studied numerology just because she was fascinated. She went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so she has such an innate understanding of our core DNA, who we are. And if you look at your name, the time when you were born, the location of where you were born, all of this carries a vibrational frequency. And it's actually like having a psychic reading, except it's literally just using the numbers of the translation of your name. So there's nothing psychic to it. It's literally just your name. And it speaks into so much. But when you look at numerology and you look at the earth cycle and the earth, right now is coming to a point where we're hitting a precipice where everybody is starting to remember that this isn't a dog eat dog world. It's not about we need to outwork, outperform, outsmart other people. It's not about waking up at 4 a.m., cold plunging and doing all these things so that you can be better when you get to work. It's actually about slowing down, stepping into flow, remembering that there is a divine force that is serving and supporting you. So instead of trying to hustle and grind, which is actually pushing and repelling what you want away from you, it's falling back into ease and flow and grace and aligning and attracting and drawing opportunity and experience to you. It's working with the energy of who you are and then the energy of who you've come here to be. But if you don't remember who you are and you don't remember who you've come here to be, then you're going to stay in that feeling of like you have to outwork and outperform because you're trying to prove, you're trying to achieve. And so everybody is going to start to feel that pull. If you look at the last 3 to 4 months of this year, we went through a lot. And I mean, we don't have to dive into it, but I would say August, how was that for you? September, October, November? We had a lot of things that were challenging us,
Mm.
like in our beliefs, in our relationships. And these were areas to reflect back to us, like, who do we really want to be and how do we want to show up? And so, that's why I started by saying the work that you do is so incredible because you are dropping what I refer to as remembrance codes. You're teaching people how to be your authentic self. You're teaching them how to find spirituality and meaning in what they're doing, whereas most people are just there to make money and make a sale and move the target forward. And we will eventually all on our own time, and not everybody's ready. So we talk about this political divide that we have. Well, we also have a divide in our readiness to remember, our readiness for our awareness. And so more people will start to open up to who they are, connect to their intuition, which is why I'm creating this intuition program. But some people are not going to be ready and they're going to shut down and they don't want to hear words like remembrance because they're still stuck in the wake up and, outwork, outperform and drive the results that they want. But ultimately, there's two ways to live. And if you're feeling the pull to do more, you're feeling the pull to create with ease, you're feeling the pull to be your authentic self, to leave some circles, to find new ones, to deepen the ones that you have, then, well, that's all part of the remembrance process.
My gosh. Wow. You just shed so much clarity on what I think a lot of people are feeling right now. And I always trust whether someone listens to this in real time or years down the road, it's going to be the right message for them at the right time. I know you get that, the divine timing piece as well. It was interesting. I'm just reflecting on what you shared. And I had a birthday in October. And on that birthday, my wish was I want everything in my life to be true to me. And I've learned to be very mindful about the wishes you make on your birthday, Rudy. I don't know, I used to think they didn't carry a lot of weight. Now I know, like, the universe shifts and moves, and so immediately following that, like, 2 really big relationships in my life felt like they got upended, and it's so interesting that you share that because I think collectively, a lot of us are feeling that, the shedding of what no longer serves, year of the snake, shedding of what no longer serves, so that we can build what we are here to build from a place of truth and alignment. And to your point, not everyone is going to be ready, but I think it's just helpful for those who are feeling that right now to understand this is happening on a collective level. Um, it really is. And so again, none of this is what I was gonna ask you about, but I always trust that what is meant to come out will come out. I think where I would love to go from that is in your own personal journey. You talked about remembering who you are. And I think about in my own life when I hadn't had that experience yet, I was so much in the chase and the hustle, just like what you talked about, the very kind of masculine energy dynamics of pursuit, chase, hustle. It was money and sales and business were all about let me prove myself, let me be validated by being top of the leaderboard or making a certain amount of money. And it wasn't until all of those things felt like they were stripped away that I got to really remember who I was and start to build from that place, and it's a very different experience doing that. So, I'd love to hear from you, your own experience of maybe forgetting who you are, what that was like if you ever pursued something, outside of that, and then what it was like to remember, and how can our listeners who are listening to this, if they haven't had that experience yet, how can they start to connect and access the truth of who they are in this lifetime, who they came here to be?
I love that question. And because your audience knows and loves you so much, I'm going to use you as an example to set the foundation. And then I'm going to explain through my story so that they can connect to their story. Um, you were very successful in the masculine energy of being on the top of the leaderboard, but you are significantly more successful today operating in the feminine. And that's the actual story. And the reason I share that is because I want everybody listening to this, whether you are male or whether you are female, you both are operating in male and female energies. So we've got these two frequency dynamics. I am very balanced. I'm in the feminine and I'm in the masculine. And I know when I need to be in the masculine. If my wife says to me, I need you to move those rocks in the flower bed there. I've got to get into the masculine. It's going to take effort and work and energy. But if I want to expand my awareness, if I want to grow my reach, I need to actually do that in the feminine energy, which is not the doing and the pushing and the overachieving. That's where you magnetize, where you draw opportunity to you. That's where you understand there's cycles to you, there's cycles to life, there's cycles to creation. So Your answer was really beautiful, but it would be lost to so many people if they didn't see what was in it for them. That's the number one driver in human behavior. And if you're listening to this and you're very successful, or you're climbing the ladder and you're successful and you're doing it in the masculine energy, I want you to know you're going to be profoundly more successful if you do exactly what Elyse has done, which is to shift into operating from the feminine energy. We still do both, but we operate more in one versus the other. And that has nothing to do with what sex you are. It is how you are operating, the energy of how you operate. And you could be profoundly more successful with less effort and frustration. My story really started by me beautifully and divinely choosing a family that didn't have a tremendous amount of money. I grew up in a very wealthy town, similar to what like Orange County, California would be, where you have multi-millionaires, and then we had our family. And my friends were given cars and boats and all these things for their birthdays. And I was working every weekend and sometimes during the week at night just to make money, so I could go on the same school trips that they were going on, so I could wear the similar styled shoes that they wore, so I could look like I fit in. I had all these experiences where I was disempowered, going to school and a teacher called me stupid and dumb and made me sit in the front of the classroom on a dunce's chair. And then I understood, oh, well, I am dumb. So I didn't study. I didn't learn. I was the class clown and all of these self-protection mechanisms. But at some point in time in my life, I decided, well, if I become a millionaire, then I will be accepted like the kids who come from wealth. So in other words, in my mind at that age, I thought wealth meant value. And I was not smart. So the only value I could have was if I was rich. And so I said, well, I'm going to create wealth. But your answer is beautiful. And I've never shared this on any podcast platform before. Everything I've said now I have shared. This I have not shared.
Mm.
I've always known who I was. I remember being 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, and I knew I came here to create profound impact. I just didn't know how. I remember being in a classroom and a girl was being bullied, and I say bullied, that boys were just calling her names, and I got up and went and sat with her, and I just said, guys, that's not okay. Like, I always had this remembrance of what we're doing, I had remembrance of karma. I had very deep levels of understanding of you are how you act and what you think and feel and so on.
Yeah.
But I then had this other side of me that was like, you're just not good enough because you're not smart. You don't have any talent. God didn't bless you with any skill. These were the thoughts running through my mind. And then it was like, oh, and we don't come from money. Oh, and we don't have these things. And so I grew up with tremendous insecurity about who I was. But making a decision at 11, 12 years old that I was going to be a millionaire at 25, that then gave me purpose. And so I got very much into my masculine energy. I came out of high school. I went straight into work, didn't go to college. I just started working, 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 working. And I became a multimillionaire. And I did it at 26 years old. And the reason I share this with you is because I remember sitting on my birthday in my loft apartment, which was brand new. And I had just furnished it, fully furnished it in 2 or 3 days. And I sat there expecting to feel like the king of the castle. And I realized I'm still that little 6-year-old boy on the dancer's chair. I still feel stupid. I still feel unworthy. The money didn't do anything. The cars, the nothing fulfilled me. I was broken inside. I don't believe anyone's broken, but that's the closest descriptive I could give to how I felt in that moment. And so that's when my journey began for me to start doing inner work, to really start to remember, like, who am I and where is my value, my worth, my meaning? But I fully believed from a young age. Remember about 16 years old, maybe 15, reading a Tony Robbins book. And I was like, this is who I'm going to be. Like, I'm going to do this. We had a motivational speaker come to our school when I was 16. And I remember thinking, that's who I am. Like what he's doing, that is who I am. But the second thought would come in, but who's going to listen to you? You know, and you're not worthy of that. And what have you done? And so I believed if I created success, well, then people would look to me and say, oh, well, I want to duplicate his success. And where I really went on in my journey of, and we can call it self-discovery, was realizing that I always had value and worth and meaning from 6 years old, eight
Mm.
years old, 15, 16. I didn't need to become anything. I already am. And today I really remind people just to stop for a moment and to remember the divinity that is them, that flows to them, through them, and that they have this awareness and they are perfectly, perfectly equipped to be who they've come here to be. Now, there isn't a person on the planet that doesn't know that there's something in them that they want. I mean, when I speak on stage, I ask the question always, who is a dream or desire that you haven't yet achieved? And every single hand goes up. I asked them in succession, have you had it for 1 year? Keep your hand. At 2 years, 3 years. At 5 years, 75% of the hands are still in the room. They all still have that desire, but they haven't been able to achieve it. Well, that's the knowing, that's the remembrance. And so what we need to do is systematically go back and start asking the questions, unfolding the layers of how we've created the self-protection of our lives. And the first place to start, because you really asked, how do we do that? Is I actually first started with, well, who am I? Like, what do I stand for? If we look at you, it's, authenticity, it's wholeness, it's spirituality. And that is beautiful because you clearly have an understanding of who you are. So when you show up in person, online, in your marketing, it's all you because you have that knowing of who you are. But where people get stuck is all of the traumas that they've gone through. Well, your traumas are your pre-qualification for who you get to become. And so I looked at all of my traumas. Sexually assaulted when I was 6 years old by an older female cousin. I then looked at, having a gun put to my head multiple times in my life, held up in an armed robbery, house broken into, everything stolen, bullied as a kid, like all these things that I wrote down. I wrote down, netted out, how did they make me feel? Why would I choose these experiences as a soul, not as a person? What would the value be? Where would the lessons be? And then when I actually looked at it all on paper, I realized, man, I am so qualified to speak to people who have forgotten who they are, who feel that they're disempowered, who have put their value in making money. Some of my clients are multimillionaires, billionaires, and they all suffer with insecurity, imposter syndrome, don't feel like they're good enough. And I'm like, the money doesn't fix it. So where do we start? And this really is the process of creating that unfoldment. For whoever's listening to this, I want them to really take a pause for a moment and just have a second of gratitude for every event of your life, even if they were painful, especially because they were painful. I mentioned sexual assault at 6 years old. You know, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, obviously. But the majority of the people I work with, and I would put that probably close to 60% of my clients are women and in corporate America have suffered sexual assault. And I can actually help them. And every time I hold someone or I hold space for someone or I'm in conversation with someone, it's not like I'm having a conversation with someone and I cannot connect. It's like, I feel you. Like I understand the pain. And so whenever that happens, I'm listening to somebody, but I'm silently saying thank you to God in that moment for the opportunity that I had, that I healed from, that I can support somebody else to lessen their time in the pain. And there's the beauty in the remembrance. It's like we choose these moments so we can come back and remember, so that when we do remember, we can lessen somebody else's time in the pain.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. You said so much there that I think is really, really poignant and important. And one of the things that stood out is that our traumas, I want you to remind me exactly what you said. It was basically our traumas are pre-qualifying us for our life's work, something
Yeah.
like that.
Pre-qualification.
Pre-qualifications, yeah. And for someone who is listening who maybe has been chasing, proving in that energy of, just achieve for the sake of achievement, there's often an unwillingness to look at what they're running from, and a lot of times if they'll take the time to sit and, and to actually examine those things, like you said, the traumas, what are the gifts? Why would I choose from a soul's perspective these things? I think they can help point us to where we're meant to go and what we're meant to do. I wanna ask you about, wholeness and about expansion. And this show and kind of my personal life journey experience, I love helping people quantum leap. I love helping people collapse space and time with their results. I feel you probably love the same as well. Um, and as I mentioned previously, there was a good part of my life where I was chasing results to try to fill a void. And when I kinda went through a dark night of the soul and was forced to face and look at all of the limiting beliefs, all of the fears, the anxieties, the traumas, all the things, and have a very spiritual awakening in that. I had an experience where for the first time, I felt whole again in a long time. And it was actually from that place of wholeness that I did quantum leap and turn my annual income into my monthly income when I'd been stuck for 10 years trying so hard to do that. And it was like in 6 weeks, it just came in. And it prompted something that we call in the community selling from wholeness. it's a very different experience, I think, to sell and run our businesses or goal set from a place of wholeness. I think sometimes people think, and I'd love your perspective on this, well, if I'm coming to wholeness, then I'm not gonna wanna keep expanding, I'm not gonna wanna keep growing, and I don't think that's the case. I feel we always want to expand and grow, it's just a different energy when we're coming from wholeness. So, I'd love your take on that, and then I'd love if you wanna share any of, I know that you have a neuroscience-based approach to expansion. Anything that you wanna share for the community who does want to grow and ascend and make more money and grow their businesses, but doing it from that place of wholeness, not seeking or chasing to try to fill a void.
I love to use things that people say to reinforce what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to go back for a second. You had shared that on your birthday that you made a declarative statement, right? And in making that declarative statement of wanting to only be in your truth and experience your truth, you had two relationships, although painful, had to create some space or some separation from you because they were no longer in congruence with the version of who you are or who you're now moving to become, right? You've leveled up your standard. Your standard changes, then your environment has to update. So I want to explain that in, let me do this way. I want to explain this in a simplistic format that's going to serve the audience to understand. The moment you make a declarative statement, the universe has to bend a knee every single time. We wake up and we say, I'm sick, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, and the universe bends a knee because you're not ready to learn that you are whole, healed, and capable of creating realities. And when you're ready, the universe bends a knee. And so I want to explain this in the form of neuroscience, but in the most simplistic form that I possibly can. You are many layers of who you are. You speak into wholeness. I'm going to use the same idea, but I'm going to use the word alignment. And I'm going to use alignment because alignment brings us into our wholeness. It's the same thing, but looking at it from a different side. We have multiple bodies. I'm going to focus only on three, but we have multiple bodies. If we actually start to look at, the human life experience going into the science, first, I want to touch on the mental body. So we have all of our thoughts. We think anywhere up to 70,000 thoughts a day. Every single thought fires an electric impulse in the brain. That is then turned into a chemical. The chemical is the interpretation of the initial thought, tells the body how to react and respond to what the brain intellectually understood. We have a thought. Thought is then fired into the body. So that's your second body. You have your mental body is the first, where all your thoughts are. That is not attached to the physical body. It is the awareness to the firing of the thoughts. Then you have the thought updates the body. The body is what we touch, see, feel. It's who we identify as, except we're not the body. I'm not the body of Rudi Riekstins. I am the awareness to the thoughts and the awareness to the body. I'm the awareness to the experience. And wholeness is when you identify not with one or the other, you realize you are the sum total of all. So you are the awareness of the mind and the body, the environment, and what you're doing, but you're not any one of them. You're connected to all of it. When you talk about walking into a room and selling as your authentic self, not to take advantage of somebody, and we describe that as walking in to serve and to be served, and there's an equal exchange, that's actually connecting to the divinity, the tapestry of everything. We need to really understand that every time we have a thought and that thought updates the body, it's literally creating the next level of our evolution. Everything in the known universe is in a constant state of expansion. Everything. Right now, galaxies, stars are being born, created. It's always growing. If we, in theory, took $1,000 and we put it on a table and we didn't think about it, we didn't touch it, we didn't do anything, it would actually grow based on the laws of the universe. It has to expand. But it doesn't expand because we meddle. We meddle because we say, well, money won't grow on account. It has to be in a savings account. And we create the limitations and restrictions on that. But if we release the attachment to something, the natural order is to grow and expand in health, in abundance, in love, in joy, in fulfillment, in freedom. But the problem comes in that we've had all these life experiences that tell us we're not good enough, we're not worthy, and this is how the world in actuality works. And those are all the illusions that take us away from that feeling of wholeness. And so when we align our thoughts, our feelings with our full intent of the soul of who we are and who we've come here to be, that's when everything starts to change in our reality. And so I liken it to this. You think a thought, you're placing a stake in the sand like they did by putting a flag in the moon that says, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And then you have another thought and you put another flag in and another stake that says, this is who I'm going to be. What you did on your birthday so beautifully was you put a declarative statement out and into the world where you said, this I am going to live from truth. And then there's this frequency resonance that literally travels throughout the planes. And it now says everything has to align to that because Elise just leveled up her expectation of what her minimum expectation is. It's like being in a relationship where somebody says to you, "Oh, are you really going to wear that? Oh, I don't like that look on you. Oh, why would you do that? Oh, why did you laugh so much at dinner tonight? There was too much laughing. You probably shouldn't talk." And they break you down. And for years, that was okay. And then one day you're like, that's not okay anymore. That's a declarative statement where the universe says, okay, let's create some separation. That's you becoming more in tune with who you are. And the more you become in tune with who you are, that's the easier you start to move forward. It's the easier you start to grow and you start to flow. I want to point out that if someone's listening to this, because you said this a moment ago, some people think that when they get what they want, they're not going to want to expand. And I want to just touch on this for a second. Expansion has to happen in all areas of life, like blowing up a balloon. If you were to blow a balloon up, for the balloon to reach its full capacity, it would need to expand evenly. But if you're only blowing into one portion of the balloon and it blows up on one side, but the rest of it doesn't, we're going to have fractional growth. And in which case, the balloon will pop. And so that's your life. If you're only growing your sales, but you're not growing your marketing, if you're only growing, your health and you're going to the gym, but you're not focusing on your relationship, there's going to be a breakdown somewhere. And so when you approach your life as not the body, not the thoughts that run through your mind that say, you can't do that, that'll never happen to you. Be aware of all of that. And in the awareness, you say, well, what if I can remember that I am divine, that I can have and be and do and achieve, and I can catch those thoughts and instead of diminishing them, ask, where do they come from? Why do I have them? Is it even true? And dismantle them. And then start to place real declarative statements of who you want to be and where you want to go. And then look at every single area of your life and do that so that you can grow holistically. That's how we scale companies from 300 million to 1.5 billion in record time. That's how we take startup companies from 10,000 a month to 150,000 a month in no time at all. Because what we're doing is not focusing on one single thing, which is the revenue driving arm. It's just touching on people, growing people holistically. When we understand neuroscience, your brain is a record keeper of the past. And so you, as you are today, as you hear this episode, you are the remembrance of who you used to be, the awareness to who you used to be, not who you are. But if you identify with who you were, then that's where you're going to stay. But if you wake up and in the first 20 minutes of the day, you connect to your mind, you change and alter your emotional state, you tap into the feeling of what it will feel like for you to be living your highest and your greatest potential, you living in truth, you living in abundance, you living in flow, then you're going to chemically alter with the mind using those three bodies, the awareness, the thoughts, and the body, the physical body, and you're going to literally alter them. Every cell will react and respond to that. The brain is the most susceptible to change and influence in the first 20 minutes. So if you were to wake up, go and sit somewhere, have some deep breaths in and out, release stress, fear, and anxiety of the remembrance of who you were, connect to a feeling of you having, being, doing, and achieving, and then stand up as that version of you 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, your entire cellular structure will now realign to that. The brain doesn't know the past, the present, the future. It's only in the ever now. And so you already are everything you aspire to have if you've done that in the beginning of your day. And so I teach a process, very simple process of people being able to curate that state in the first 20 minutes. And then the world, literally, universe, is going to bend its knee all day, every single day. And when you realize the divinity and the power that is you, and you bring that into your company and you teach this to your sales teams, and you start to realize that when you show up as a whole, holistic, beautiful, aligned, that all thoughts, body, and action align for the end result of who you aspire to be, that's where life becomes beautiful. And we're all supposed to remember that.
Wow, 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 wow. Mic drop moment. Yes, to all of that. I would love for you to share, Rudy, so you mentioned that everything in our mind, it's a record of the past, right? And I know that you also teach people how to channel intuition and connect with intuition. And we've got just a few minutes left, unfortunately, because I'd love for this interview to be 2 hours and be able to go way deeper. But I would love for you to share for anyone who's listening who is riveted right now, who's saying, I want to learn how to access that higher level of consciousness. I'm ready to remember who I am. I'm ready to return to wholeness. And I'm ready to learn how to be guided by my intuitive knowing versus just the old limiting beliefs and thought patterns of the past. I know that you have a course coming up in January that I'd love for you to share a little bit about. And then anything you want to say in just a minute or two here about accessing intuition and why that matters now, maybe more than ever, I think would be really powerful for our listeners, and then we'll tell them where they can connect with you and go deeper as well.
Well, thank you so much for the question. I want to remind people that you are a soul first and foremost. You are not the limitation of the human experience. And when you come to earth into this body, regardless of your beliefs, a sliver of you comes into the awareness of who you are. But if you were to take a triangle and turn it upside down, the sliver of the awareness of the human experience is at the very bottom. And then there's this broad level of awareness, of intelligence that is above, and it's accessible to every one of us. And for the longest time, I ignored this level of intelligence. It's like driving on a highway and you get the feeling, turn off, but you need to go this way and you turn off and you miss 100-car pileup. That was my story. And I've had these moments of receiving and tapping into intuition, like hiring somebody to work in my company, to sign up for a program, to work with somebody, whatever it looks like. I follow my intuitive hits, but most people don't know how to listen to the intelligence that is within them. And so I'm creating truly just a month-long program that's going to walk people through how to actually remember who they are, how to connect to their inner guidance, and then to only make decisions from that vantage point. I will tell you that if you were to learn to listen to the voice of you, to your soul, to the awareness and the intelligence of everything that knows of who you are and who you've come here to be, you're never going to make a wrong decision because you'll be trusting yourself. And that's what we all want. We all want to know that when we make a decision, we're making the right decision. And I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is to live a life with ease because we avoid the trappings because we're making the right decisions connected to who we are.
Yeah. Yes. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I think truly more important than ever now for people to know how to do and to create a life that, like you said, at the end of our life, we'll look back and say, I did it. I went for it full throttle and I remembered who I was. So beautiful. How can people learn more about the course, the program, your work? I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how people can connect with you before we wrap.
I would just say if they want to go to my website, which is rudiriekstins.com, happily share it in the show notes with you because I've got one of those last names that are painful to spell, but it is Rudiriekstins, rudiriekstins.com, where you can find me on any social using the same handle.
Amazing. Well, I feel like I just, I don't know, took a sound bath or had a clearing or a cleanse. Like it just feels good. The energy here is so good. And I so appreciate what you shared. I think everyone listening, myself included, is feeling very opened up to the truth of who we are, remembering the power and flow that's available at all times to us when we access that, and really excited to expand from that place. So, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your wisdom, your story, your brilliance, your guidance. We will link everything in the show notes. And I want to really encourage everyone listening to go check out Rudy's work, get connected with the January course if you're listening in real time. Follow him, follow his podcast, and you are a bright light in the world, my friend. So, thank you so much for this. And to you, my listener, thank you as always for being a listener to the podcast. I want to remind you as we close to trust yourself on your path to success. Remember that your desires are green lights leading you and everyone around you to a brighter future. I'll see you on the next episode.